Hello, and this month I'm reporting from the IUG Wolverhampton conference, where the sessions, the conversation and the curry did not disappoint. The big takeaway, VS Code, or code for IBM I, it's becoming hard to ignore. I spoke with presenter Richard Moulton about the move away from the green screen coding, and with our own Dylan Goodacre-Taylor on what it's like to come from a Python C++ background into RPG using VS Code. So, if your team is weighing up whether to modernize its development tooling, this episode is well worth a look. Welcome to your IBM I update for November 2025, your monthly digest into what's been happening in the IBM I community. So yes, this month I visited Wolverhampton and the last IUG conference of the year. Now, the evening before the big day, delegates arrived at the smartly accommodated Mount Hotel and gathered in the expo hall for a cracker of a curry. After rather a late night of good company and conversation, the event kicked off with the obligatory bacon butties. Always appreciated. Then, after the State of the Nation update from the IUG community members, it was down to business with the keynote speech by Winnie Allen. She's the Executive Director of Product Management for IBM Power. Winnie spoke how the future is now and their strategy for the AI era. For IBM I, this starts with Power 11 and introduces zero planned downtime, ransomware detection in less than a minute, and AI. The latter involving their new Spire acceleration technology and, of course, Project Bob. Winnie concluded the presentation by providing the 4 key future innovations and strategic focus. These were to focus on automation and intelligence, improve security and the developer experience, and investing in hybrid technologies to enhance flexibility and scalability. All very sensible from Big Blue. Scott Forstie then took the reins and presented the strategy and roadmap for IBM I, and IBM continue their rock-solid release and support schedule that takes IBM I well into the next decade. Enhancements continue to be influenced by the Common European Advisory Council, of whom we're all present at this very IUG event, and the response from the IBM I Marketplace survey. And if you've not completed this year's survey, it's too late now, but there's always next year. One thing that was apparent was that these days IBM are doing a lot more in keeping the community up to date with what they're doing. Scott himself was celebrating his 100th episode of IC, where he provides short demonstrations of tools and techniques. Recommended a look? The link should be somewhere in this blog below. But of course, the big announcement was with Project Bob and its objectives to automate the mundane and augment the complicated. Now, I covered the release of Project Bob in the October edition of the IBM I update, so for an overview on what it's all about, go take a look at that. But there were a few new morsels for us to digest. First, in summary, Bob will be an AI-powered integrated development environment and modernization assistant. It supersedes the Watson Code Assistant for I and aims to become a software development assistant that's integrated into a code editor. It aims to understand and explain code, refactor and generate RPG, and transform fixed format RPG to freeform ILE 2. In addition, it should be able to create unit tests, more functionality than Watson ever dreamed of. For this, IBM has merged its AI assistance efforts on IBM I with its other Power counterparts. It's being pitched as a junior programmer or AI development partner for IBM I, System Z and AI Linux. Bob will rely on a combination of foundation models, and this will include IBM's own Granite LLM, that Watson X for I was being developed on, and the increasingly popular Claude by Anthropic. How these will be combined is still unknown, but if and when they resolve these differences, then the future looks, well, artificial. When will it be released? No firm date has been announced yet, and it's based upon the expanding functionality. It's more than likely going to be well into 2026 at the earliest. Now, there were many interesting topics during the event, and for the first time for the Midlands Conference, IUG added a third stream, so ever expanding. But I'd like to pick up on one particular presentation by Richard Moulton. Richard's session was on VS Code and how to get the best from using this IDE within IBM I. This session wasn't pitched at newbies and assumed that you had some basic familiarity with Code for I, but even for the uninitiated, you would have got a lot from seeing the functionality and flexibility that VS Code brings to a developer. And he covered a lot, from layouts and minimaps to comparing source and source references. In his 2-hour session, you quickly got the picture that VS Code is, to use the keynote speech title, the future now. So, afterwards, we sat down to deep dive into why he believes VS Code is transforming the IBM I development experience and what advice he has for teams thinking about making this switch. I started by asking him what first attracted him to VS Code as an IBM I developer.
Yeah, well, over the years, I think I've pretty much tried every source editor that has come along, and I started getting into open source languages probably about 10 years ago, something like that. And there was, I noticed that there were a lot better source editors and IDEs available in other languages than there were in for the likes of IBM. We've always had RDI, of course, or variants of RDI, WDSC, etc. But there just seemed to be a lot more choice for in other languages. And then VS Code came along, and I started using that. In fact, actually, I started using, I don't know if you remember, there was an editor called ILE editor that Liam wrote probably 6 or 7 years ago. And that's actually the one that got me into VS Code at the time. So yeah, I tried ILE editor and ILE editor 2, and then he sort of moved over into the VS Code extensions, which got me going there. But mainly it was the other languages that got me into VS Code, the other open source languages, because it's just natural to do open source languages in VS Code. You know, there's so many extensions available for those things, and that's what everybody else is doing as well, of course, using VS Code.
Yeah, of course. Yes. So during your session at the IUG, you mentioned that you use the likes of SEU, RDI, the Me Workspace or My Workspace, and now VS Code. So what was that final element that tipped you over to using VS Code as your main editor? Was it that open source element, the ability to use those other bits?
Absolutely, yeah. Because I do more than just RPG programming. I do a fair bit of node programming as well. And for node programming, I'm using VS Code all the time. So it just seemed natural fit. So no, rather than swapping around in different IDEs and different source editors, just to use the same one. And it's really, really good. It's personally, I find it a lot easier to use than RDI. I was finding RDI was getting quite clunky, and just not always a smooth experience.
Okay, now you mentioned Node.js there and open source tools. Do you think VS Code encourages IBM I developers to branch out into other technologies, and why would they consider this?
Yeah, possibly, but for me, it was the other way around. It was I was actually investigating and looking at other languages and what they could offer me and my customers for on the IBMI platform. And it is just natural in those other languages to be using VS Code. So you get to a point where you think, well, why aren't I? Why not use VS Code for IBMI source editing as well? It just seems the right thing to do.
Makes good sense. But for teams who are already happily working in RDI, what would you think would be the real reason for them to consider VS Code? Is it perhaps more faster? Is it cheaper, more flexible, or perhaps something else entirely?
No, sure. I mean, for me, I have been using VS Code. I've been using RDI for quite some time prior to VS Code, and what actually tipped it for me, which was not a reason for other people, but I use the Linux operating system for my main desktop. Right. So I shifted away from Windows about a dozen years ago, and from 9.6 was the last version of RDI that was supported on Linux. So they dropped to Linux support. So it was natural for me to move away. But at the end of the day, I'm not knocking RDI. I mean, it is feature rich. There's all sorts that you can do in there. And there are features in there that you won't find in VS Code as well. But I was just finding it was quite, as I say, it was quite clunky to use. Some of the interfaces for things like search and replace and what have you were never that intuitive, I found. And it was quite difficult to install, and it was always a bit of the nervy experience. If you wanted to upgrade, would it still be working after the event? So for me, if RDI is working for you and it's giving you what you need, and perhaps there is no reason to switch out to VS Code. But for me, I just it seemed like a natural fit, especially when you're using open source languages. You're just staying in one IDE all the time, which is great.
Absolutely, that makes good sense. So, what advantages do you think that VS Code brings to newer, younger, fresher developers who might not have come from a traditional IBMI background?
Yeah, I think it will be very similar experience for them as it was for me, really. If they're working in Node or Python or Ruby or whatever it is, TypeScript, they'll already be using VS Code. So again, it's just going to be a natural transition for them to use the Code for I extensions just to access IBMI source or IBMI IFS or whatever it is within the IBMI world. So I just think it's going to be just a natural fit for the newer devs that are coming on.
Okay, so you've convinced me, and say you've convinced the development team to use VS Code, but what would be the simplest, easiest route for a first timer to get up and running with VS Code on IBMI?
Yeah, no, it's really, really good at the moment. There's so many brilliant resources out there. So I would recommend everybody, all you've got to do is to Google download VS Code, and that will take you to the Microsoft website to download and install. And it is really quick and easy. Then there's things like the Code for I docs themselves. They got some good getting started information on there, all sorts of information about the different extensions and how to get up and running with those. And not, of course, I'm plugging just the Sidon group, but the Sidon group also have some excellent resources for VS Code. They've done just this year, they've been doing a series as well, getting started with VS Code video series. So there's some good hints and tips in that. Sanjula has been doing also moving away from the green screen set of videos on LinkedIn. So there's some great resources there. And if you really want to get into VS Code, then I recommend the Sidon group. They do pretty much every 2 weeks, they do a Code for I Fridays session. So you can join other Code for I people that are using the tool. You can ask them questions, you can talk about your experiences and what have you. So that's every Friday, and it's generally around about 7:30 in the evening on every other Friday. But there's some good discussions going on in that as well, and you can ask your questions and what have you.
Heard that it's a very active and inclusive community there. Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
But what extensions do you consider a must install for RPG developers?
Yeah. So there's what's called the IBMI development pack. And when you're looking on the VS Code marketplace, if you scan for IBMI, you'll see, just scroll down through it. And there are quite a lot of different extensions now. Every time I look, there seem to be more extensions coming on. But if you look for the IBMI development pack, that's the Code for I set of extensions that are recommended. And there's about a dozen different extensions that are included as part of that. And that will get you up and running with RPG and IBMI development. So you'll have the RPG extension in there that includes things like the linter and the language. You also got the language syntax. So that's for highlighting the different opcodes and what have you in RPG, and it also deals with DDS and CL and what have you. And of course, in that pack, you'll also get the DB2 for I extension. So if you want to work with, you do all your SQL from VS Code as well. You don't need to go out into to ACS. You can do it straight within the VS Code editor as well.
Thank you for that. Now, for those who missed your session, it was very, very well received. You showed a few very clever productivity tips. But which ones do you think deliver the biggest time savers?
Yeah, one of my big ones, and one I keep banging on about, is for me, it's multiple cursors. It's the ability to create multiple cursors within when you're editing source, and that allows you to manipulate multiple lines with the same keys. So it's brilliant when you want to copy and paste the same or similar text into multiple areas within the source. Yeah. Or if you want to change prefixes on a set of fields, perhaps in a data structure, or when you're output into files. And I am forever using that particular facility within VS Code. I just find it so nice and so easy to use. You've also got the RPG linter, which is one of the built-in features for free format code. So that you can set up a set of business rules that how you want your code to be formatted and presented, and it will provide online syntax or highlighting if you break any of those rules. So it is things like making sure that your constants are in uppercase, or that all your variables need to be defined and used. So you can set these rules up, and it will automatically lint your source as you're editing, which is great. And also when you're working with RPG, you can right click on any of the variables within the source, and you can do you can find out all the points that particular variable is referenced and used. So it's called peak definition, and it pops up a little window within your editor. So you can see immediately where that particular field's been used. And also the flexibility in how you view the source. You can have multiple views of the same source file open at the same time, so you can be editing in one particular portion of the code but viewing another portion of the code, which is really useful when you want to reference what another procedure is doing or another subroutine is doing. So yeah, lots of
there's a lot. Yes. And I feel like we're scratching the surface here. So
I know, absolutely.
What features in VS Code genuinely impressed RPG developers once they see them in action? What do you think would be that one feature or two?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what struck me was, firstly, if those of you who are familiar with installing RDI, is how quickly you can get VS Code installed, set up and running, and you can get yourself into VS Code so quickly and easily, and it loads quickly as well. You can load up VS Code in a matter of seconds, and it's just there. It's lightning fast. But you've got things like when you submit a compile, you'll get immediate feedback within your source editor if any compile errors, and you can click on the problems list and automatically go to the line that is an error. It'll highlight the line within the source code that you're actually working on. And there's other things as well. You can do source comparison, so you can compare earlier versions of the source file, and you get a Git-like diff view of changes between different versions of a source file that you've been editing, which is really great. I mean, if you're not doing local source, that's sort of the the next best thing. You can compare different source members to see what the differences are between them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
For reasons that you're giving sound compelling to move to VS Code, but
Definitely.
do you think that VS Code will ever become the dominant IBMI development environment, or will it just stay one of many options?
I think it will become dominant. I mean, you look at all the sort of discussion that's going on at the moment within from IBM in terms of VS Code. I mean, I think that's the direction of travel, and especially when you consider. I mean, one of the other things that really impressed me about VS Code is it's really active community. So if you don't like the way that something works in VS Code, you can raise an issue in the issue tracker, and there you get responses almost immediately to issues. You get feedback and from the rest of the community and from the core development team that manage VS Code. And so, you know, sometimes the turnaround on some of these issues, you know, new features is literally weeks.
Good Lord.
Or maybe sometimes months, but certainly weeks. And you know that never happened in RDI. I mean, how frequently do you get updates for RDI?
Yes, that's scratching my head now.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I mean, I think it you know, for me, it is the dominant code editor. You know, I wouldn't go back now. It's not, you know, I wouldn't start using RDI, and I certainly wouldn't go back to SEU. I know there are some sort of die-hard people that like to use SEU, and you know, that's fair enough. It's their preference, but you wouldn't get me using it again. No. So yeah, so definitely, I see it to be the dominant editor. Yeah.
So, if you could give one bit of advice to a developer using VS Code for the first time, what would it be?
It's going to be really easy to answer this, Andy. Try it. Just download it.
Yes.
Try it. There are some great. I mean, I've already talked about some of the great resources that you've got available and out there. There's a whole community that are there to help you. So if something's not quite working or you don't understand how something's working, then just you've got all sorts of different ways of asking for help. So I don't know, are you familiar with Zulip, which is the sort of chat open source?
I know people.
I'll send a link through. But
Yeah.
you can join that, and there's a particular channel on there just for VS Code, so you can ask your VS Code questions on that, and there's a whole community of people that will help answer. I mentioned the Code for iFriders. If you're struggling with it, then you can sign up for the Code for I session and ask your questions there. You can raise issues on the GitHub issue tracker, so get yourself a GitHub account. It's free, it's easy to do.
Yes.
Yeah, but give yourself some time to do it as well. Don't give up too quickly. If it's not quite doing what you're expecting it to do, then give a shout out to the community. They'll soon enough help. Oh, and of course, I ought to give a plug for the IUG. I would be surprised if there's not always going to be a VS Code session at the IUG conference. So get yourself along to an IUG conference as well, and there's plenty of people there that you can ask questions of.
Absolutely, quite right. And finally, Richard, after 36 years of IBMI development, what excites you the most about the future of RPG and VS Code?
I don't know about you, Andy, but I was really encouraged by the Project Bob session that we had at the IUG conference. I mean, I just think that is going to be phenomenal. I'm really excited to get my hands on that. I see that as helping IBMI development teams modernize their applications phenomenally well. And you know, it to me is just going to help everybody just modernize that code base. I mean, there's so many customers that I go into, and you look at their RPG code, and there's different, you can tell the different stages at which the programs were developed by the state of that particular code, you know, the version of RPG that it was written in, some you know, fixed formats, some mix of different formats of RPG, but Bob, you know, from what I've seen, Bob will help you convert that all into free format, you know, modernize it, create unit tests for you automatically, you know, shift that over into a local workspace that you're not working in source members now, and you can push that into Git. So I see for smaller teams, and I generally see smaller development teams in the IBMI world more so than any other sort of language or system. I think that's going to be an absolute bonus. I really hope they get the pricing right though. So yeah.
We wait to see. We wait to see indeed. Yes, but it
No,
will be revealed.
That's the one
time
thing
in
that's really exciting.
2026. Yes. Richard, thank you for spending time with the IBMI update. We do very much appreciate it.
No, thank you, Andy. No, really appreciate the opportunity.
And my thanks to Richard for sharing his time and thoughts. Should you ever get the chance to join Richard on one of his sessions at an IOG event, please do so. He has 36 years worth of experience and insight and is one of those key people in the IBMI community that's forever pushing the envelope in development on the IBMI. Well worth a recommendation. Now, while Richard's interview gives us the perspective of a highly experienced RPG developer who has moved to VS Code after decades and decades of SEU and RDI, the next conversation offers a very different story. Dylan Goodacre-Taylor is one of Proximity's newest developers, joining our team with a background in Python, C and C++, and no prior exposure to IBMI or RPG. Unlike Richard, Dylan began his development journey in VS Code and later discovered RPG through it, giving us a fresh view on how a modern tool can make the platform more accessible to new talent. I sat down with him and started by asking him, before working with RPG, what programming languages and environments was he familiar with?
Well, I'd mainly used Python, a little bit of C and C++ at that point. So I was doing the Python in VS Code, the C++ I was doing in Visual Studio, and that was for some bits of like graphics programming with OpenGL. But that's about it really.
Right, so when you first heard that you'd be working with IBMI and RPG, what were your initial reactions?
I was actually like very intrigued, I would say, because I hadn't heard of it before. Obviously I'd heard of IBM, but not the IBMI system itself. Hadn't heard of RPG at all. So I went and did a little Google search, saw the images of like the green screens. It actually got me quite excited to see what it was all about.
Okay, that's cool. Well, so in your time with IBMI, have you experienced any other development environments such as PDM, the SEU or RDI?
Yes, so we use PDM all the time really to kind of get around the system. And when I started learning, I used SEU on the green screen to do all the programming.
And so, bearing in mind that your life was in VS Code before, so what were your thoughts on developing using the green screen?
I think initially it felt like there was a lot of features missing. I've kind of come around to it now, and it's grown on me quite a bit, I think, but definitely at the beginning I did struggle with, what did I struggle with? Even just how it doesn't insert text, it overwrites text, things like copy and pasting is not the same, like all this kind of stuff was a bit of a struggle.
But did the fact that you could work in VS Code influence how you felt about learning RPG?
Well, I didn't even know that it was possible until about 2 months in, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it worked really well. So yeah, I thought it was good.
Great. So, but do you think your experience with VS Code hinder you starting on RPG in the green screen?
I think it probably did, because you're kind of expecting all these features that don't really exist on SEU. Like stuff, simple stuff like syntax highlighting, like being able to see what's a variable, what's a subroutine or whatever, does not exist in SEU. So it makes it not as easy to kind of at a quick glance understand what the code's doing, I think.
No, of course, but what surprised you the most when learning RPG compared to the languages that you were using before?
Well, compared to a language like Python, RPG is like incredibly rigid, I would say. Like statically typed, having to declare even, the sizes of all the packed floats and everything you're using. But using the free format more, I started on the fixed format and moving on to the free format. There's a lot more flexibility there.
Oh yes.
And to be honest, I really do quite like coding in RPG now.
Excellent. Oh, that's great. But now, with your experience in VS Code and now SEU as well, do you think VS Code lowers the barrier for new people joining IBMI development team?
Yeah, definitely. I think it really does. As I said before, like the syntax highlighting and stuff, like it really does just make the whole experience of coding in RPG a lot easier, a lot more, well, I guess a lot more accessible. Yeah.
Yes. And something you mentioned a little earlier about extensions. Which of the VS Code features or extensions did you find most useful when writing and understanding RPG in VS Code?
Well, the main one to get is the IBMI development pack, which basically includes like 12 different extensions, which have all been kind of collated into one package, and it features basically everything you're going to need. Syntax highlighting, linters, being able to write and compile in RPG, CL. There's also DB2 for IBMI, which allows you to actually access the database through VS Code, so you can execute SQL statements, get back data. So yeah, those are some really good extensions.
Excellent. Now, of course, AI is a hot topic and all the different chatbots and so on and so forth. Do you use any AI tools within VS Code to aid with development?
Generally, I don't, but VS Code does come with Copilot. But my experience with using Copilot in terms of asking it questions with RPG code has been a bit hit and miss. But what it is good for is the autocomplete. So you start, say you've written a little block of code, and you go on to the next bit. It kind of guesses what you're going to try and write next. And generally that's actually quite good, and that does speed up writing quite a bit.
Fantastic. Now, based upon your knowledge of VS Code, what would you like to see next in IBMI tooling to make learning or even developing even easier?
I mean, there is an extension that does this, but it's not very comprehensive, I would say. One to kind of see how your DDS looks on a green screen kind of in real time.
Okay.
I think would be really useful when you're kind of designing a screen.
Okay. I'll have to put that request into IBM.
And my thanks for Dylan, one of our newest members of the Proximity development team, for taking the time to give his thoughts on VS Code, coming from a different direction than Richard, having schooled in Python and C and C++. But now being a convert to RPG, having been mentored by some of the best coders in the industry at Proximity HQ in Leeds. So, these two interviews reveal the shift happening across the platform. For experienced RPG developers, VS Code offers modern tooling without abandoning IBMI. For new talent, VS Code makes IBMI approachable, familiar, and enjoyable. And for companies, VS Code helps future-proof development by aligning IBM I with mainstream development workflows. But finally, a quick update on the latest PTFs for November. And all the PTFs revolve unusually around security updates. First, we have multiple vulnerabilities in the Java SDK that affects WebSphere Application Server and WebSphere Application Server Liberty. Also, sticking with WebSphere, there is an additional vulnerability with the SMTP injection due to the Jakarta mail, again due to Java. We also have a bind issue with accepting records with untrusted data, And finally, there was a remote code execution vulnerability too. So IBM recommends installing the latest PTF. Again, I'll flash that on the screen or have the comment down below. And that's it for this edition of the IBMI update. For more like this and previous episodes, please see our blog on the Proximity website. And of course on LinkedIn too. But for now, I'm Andrew Nicholson, we're Proximity, the IBMI partners that are in your corner. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.